You ever notice how some people just never try to be popular? Not in school, not at work, not even online. No chasing attention, no carefully crafted image. No need to be liked by everyone in the room. And what's strange is they don't seem to feel like they're missing out. They're not bitter, they're not resentful, they're just uninterested. While everyone else is playing the game, they quietly step off the field. So what's going on there? Because in a world that runs on likes, validation, and social status, opting out isn't normal. It's psychological. And once you understand it, you start to see these people very differently. Let's start with something simple. Most people care about popularity because deep down, their brain treats it like survival. Thousands of years ago, being accepted by your group wasn't optional. If you were rejected, you were alone. And if you were alone, you didn't last long. So your brain evolved to track social approval constantly. Am I liked? Am I accepted? Do I belong? Every compliment feels like safety. Every rejection feels like danger. That's why popularity still matters so much today, even though we're not living in tribes anymore. But here's where it gets interesting. Some people just don't feel that system as strongly, not because they're broken, but because something in their experience rewired how they interpret social reward. A lot of it starts early. Imagine growing up in an environment where attention wasn't consistent. Sometimes people were there for you, sometimes they weren't. Sometimes approval came, sometimes it didn't, and eventually your brain makes a quiet adjustment. It stops relying on others for validation, not in a dramatic way, not consciously, just gradually, because depending on something unreliable feels risky. So instead, you learn to generate your own sense of worth. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, do I respect myself? That shift changes everything. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a move toward internal validation, where your self-worth comes less from other people's reactions and more from your own standards. And once that switch happens, popularity loses its power, because popularity is, at its core, external. It depends on other people choosing you, approving of you, agreeing with you, paying attention to you. But if your sense of worth isn't built on that anymore, the whole system just stops feeling important. There's another layer to this. A lot of people who never cared about being popular learned something early that most people don't learn until much later. That popularity is unstable. One day you're in, the next day you're out. One wrong move, one shift in group dynamics, and everything changes. So instead of investing energy into something that can disappear overnight, they invest in something more stable. Skills, independence, a small number of real relationships, things that don't vanish because of a rumor or a change in trend. And then there's the cost, because being popular isn't free. It requires constant adjustment. You have to read the room, say the right things, laugh at the right moments. Sometimes you have to agree when you don't agree, pretend when you don't feel like pretending. For some people, that trade-off feels worth it. For others, it feels exhausting. And over time, they realize something. I don't actually want to perform for acceptance. So they stop, not out of insecurity, but out of clarity. This is where people often get it wrong. They assume that someone who doesn't care about popularity must be antisocial, awkward, disconnected. But that's not usually the case. A lot of these people are perfectly capable socially. They can hold conversations, build relationships, navigate groups. They just don't feel the need to optimize every interaction for approval. They're not trying to win the room. They're just trying to be in it, honestly. There's also a cognitive side to this. Your brain has limited attention. It can only care deeply about a certain number of things. And for some people, popularity just doesn't make the priority list. They're focused on ideas, projects, personal goals, things that require depth instead of visibility. And because of that, they develop what psychologists call selective attention, where irrelevant signals get filtered out. Social status becomes background noise, not because they can't see it, but because their brain decided it's not worth tracking. And here's something most people don't realize. Not caring about popularity often comes with a hidden advantage. You become harder to control because a lot of social pressure works through approval. If you want to belong, you have to act this way. If you want to be accepted, you have to believe this. But if you don't need that approval, those pressures lose their leverage. You're freer to think independently, to disagree, to walk away. And that kind of independence can look strange in a system built on conformity. But it's not all easy, because there's a trade-off here too. When you don't play the popularity game, you don't get its rewards. You might be overlooked, misunderstood, left out of certain opportunities. People might assume you don't care about connection, even when you do. And sometimes you have to watch others move ahead simply because they're better at being seen. Still, most of these people wouldn't switch places because what they gain feels more valuable. They don't have to maintain an image. They don't have to constantly monitor how they're perceived. There's a kind of quiet stability in that, a sense that who you are doesn't shift depending on who's watching. And maybe the most important part is this: not caring about popularity doesn't mean not caring about people. It usually means the opposite. It means caring more about real connection than broad approval. Fewer people, but deeper relationships, less noise, more meaning. So when you see someone who never tried to be popular, don't assume they failed at the game. There's a good chance they just understood the rules and chose not to play. Because popularity is loud, it's visible, measurable, constantly reinforced. But there's another path that doesn't get talked about as much. Quieter, less obvious, where your value isn't decided by the room, but by something internal. And in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, there's something strangely powerful about being someone who never needed to be. If this made you pause for a second, subscribe.